If you're ready.
I'm ready when you are, Mayor.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the study session of the Cathedral City Council. Today is Wednesday, January 27th, 2021. In light of the COVID-19 pandemic, in accordance with guidelines to practice social distancing, we are conducting this meeting by video conference. I'll now call the meeting to order. City Clerk, if we could have the roll call.
Councilmember Ross.
Present.
Councilmember Lamb.
Here.
Councilmember Carnevale.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez.
Here.
Mayor Gregory.
Here. All right. Next on our agenda is agenda finalization. Are there any changes to the study session agenda?
I have none, Mayor.
All right. Seeing none, we'll proceed. We're going to go into closed session. City Attorney, would you please read the closed session item, and anyone wanting to make a comment, please signal at this time.
I'd be happy to do that, Mayor. There's only one item on today's closed session. It's a conference with the legal counsel with regard to one item of potential litigation.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, do you see anyone indicating they wish to speak at this time?
I see no hands at this time.
All right. Well, then we will recess into closed session. Participants, you'll need to find the link for that and join that meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're back in session. Mr. City Attorney, do you have anything to report out of the closed session?
Thank you, Mayor. The City Council did meet and discuss its one item of closed session that's listed on the agenda. It did have a discussion, but the council has decided to hold that item over for another 2 weeks, and you'll address that at your next regular meeting as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, so the next item that we have is public comment. So this, for items not on the agenda, this is the designated time for members of the public to address the council on items that are not on the agenda. Members of the public will have the opportunity to comment on any matter listed on the agenda at the time the council considers the matter. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes in length. The agenda itself outlined the process to join our video conference. If there are any members of the public on our video conference who wish to make comments at this time, please use the raise hand feature on your screen or press *9 if you're joining us by telephone. The clerk will call on you when it's your turn to speak, and when it is your turn, please make sure to unmute your audio. So let's look at our list. Do we have any participants that wish to speak that are raising their hand?
I do not see any hands at this time, Mayor.
All right. Well, with that, then we will move into our study session. And our first item is a Lift to Rise presentation on We Will Lift Regional Pledge for Housing Opportunity. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. We have been working with Lift to Rise for some time so that they can give you an update on a new program that they are working on and I'm going to avoid giving their presentation for them, but I know their objective is to help close the gap so that the construction of new housing projects becomes more likely. And I see that Heather Vicona, who's the director, I think is the right term, of Lift to Rise is here. And Heather, I'll let you introduce the members of your team that are here, and you all can do the presentation. And I know we have their presentation ready for you. So.
Thank you, Charlie. Also really excited that now I'm in 2 boxes on the Zoom screen as well. Thank you. I'm Heather Vicona. I'm the CEO of Lift to Rise. I know some of you are really grateful for this time to be with you all today. And with me, I have Adeseli Palafox Parks, who's our Deputy Director, and Taylor Leibolt Varner, who is the Regional Affordable Housing Planner placed with us here at Lift to Rise. So we're really excited to talk to you all today. Like Charlie said, we've been working with the city for some time on a number of different aspects, and especially during the time of COVID-19. We say that in some ways at Lift to Rise, we're running a sidecar, and that sidecar is rental assistance. And we know that you all know that we've dispersed almost $1 million to Cathedral City residents and continue to work now through what is a waiting list of more than 2,000 Coachella Valley households who are housing insecure and need help paying their rent. In the next couple of weeks, we'll be able to update folks on next steps with rental assistance. I know folks are aware that there was funding in the last stimulus for additional rental assistance. And so we continue to work with the localities on what will happen next. But all of that just as context to really just say, in the Coachella Valley, we continue to see that community residents, and particularly in the city of Cathedral City, where I don't know if Taylor or Araceli can tell me quickly, you all were one of the highest allocations of rental assistance funding in the Coachella Valley. So it had one of the highest number of residents applying and needing support. Was it number 3?
It was like top 5.
Yeah, in the top 5 of the cities. And we manage the catchment from the pass all the way into Blythe. So just for a little bit of context. But really why we're here today, and Charlie, we do have a slide deck, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure, do we need to pull it up or do you pull it up?
Tracy will bring it up for you, and you'll just need to tell her when you need to have the slide advanced.
Okay, sure. I'll just give it a little bit of context and then I'll do the first couple of slides and pass it over to Taylor and Araceli. So at Lift to Rise, many of you know that we operate a housing collaborative action network. And you probably also know that we use a lot of jargon, so we'll try not to do that today. But really, we have a work group of about 50 partners, which includes all 9 cities in the county, and that we're working together on an action plan to radically increase the supply of affordable housing through investment and policy initiatives, and to build the capacity of residents to engage in this work. And so the city of Cathedral City has participated in a lot of sort of one-off things that we're doing, including a housing catalyst fund that we are about to launch in the spring. The city provided a letter of support for that. And what we're doing now, as we have so many different initiatives happening, is we're asking that our partners, so partner organizations and the municipalities, make a formal pledge of support. So we also asked if the city is willing to, at some point, to take a resolution to endorse or pledge support for the work that we're all doing together. It's really nothing new. We're not asking for money. We're not asking for something different. We're just trying to codify the support of our existing partners, which includes all of the municipalities. So I'll just go into the slide deck really quickly. Taylor, Araceli, did you want to say anything before we start?
No, I think we can get started.
Okay, sure. Tracy, if you wouldn't mind, could you go to the second slide? Sure. So just for quick context, our vision as an organization is a future where all families are healthy, stable, and thriving. Our work, deep research and data analysis and community listening has led us to these 2 pathways that we focus on. One is advancing housing stability, and the other is increasing economic opportunity. So like I said, we work with more than 50 local collaborative partners, countless community members, and we're working from an action plan. So every 2 years, together with folks in Cathedral City and across the valley, we develop an action plan that will get us closer to our 10-year goal. Tracy, if you could go to the next slide. And this work is really sitting in this context that pre-COVID and now, we know that 1 in 2 individuals in the Coachella Valley is earning at or below 200% of the federal poverty level. This is a really important indicator because 200% of the federal poverty level, research shows, is really where families are at when they're at the edge of extreme financial precarity. We know that wages are half of what they need to be for residents to be able to afford even just a 2-bedroom apartment at fair market rent in Riverside County. We know that more than half of renters are housing cost burdened, and that folks are spending way more than 1/3 of their income on rent. And we know that people of color face much higher rates of housing insecurity. Tracy, if you could go forward. So our goal is that, and our housing work organizes around this goal, that we want all families to have stable, safe, and affordable housing with more money left over to spend on things other than rent. And we want folks to have stable and satisfying employment with opportunities to thrive. These goals were identified collaboratively together with multiple community partners and community residents. and how we'll get to that future. So the four things that we're really focusing on is one is advancing a community value pipeline of investable projects. Two is developing a shared affordable housing friendly policy agenda, driving regional investment, and building pathways to economic mobility. So just a pause for a second. Like, none of this is new. This is stuff that folks in the city, dating back to former Mayor Aguilar and before, and Charlie, we've been working with the city for years on. What we haven't done is really codified and defined the work that we're doing. So the first thing is the pipeline, together with stakeholders across the valley. We've done an inventory of affordable housing and continue to inventory the pipeline to see what can get built with some type of policy or investment intervention. And the housing fund that I alluded to earlier, and we'll talk about in a minute, is part of that agenda. But we know that also we're operating on two sides of the same equation, which is one, that rents are too high, and the second is that incomes are too low. And so our work is targeting both of those areas. And next, I will pass it over to Taylor.
Yeah, we can go to the next.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Heather. As Heather mentioned, our Housing Collaborative Network, or CAN, work to develop a two-year action plan around this three-pronged approach to increasing housing stability. Tracy, you can go to the next slide, please. Increasing housing stability in the Valley by through the production of 10,000 affordable units, which our research partner at USC has showed that would reduce rent burden in the Coachella Valley by 30%. And this is a big goal. I don't think that's a surprise to any of you. In comparison, we're producing 59 affordable units on average a year. So going from 59 a year to 1,000 a year it requires a dramatic shift in how we approach development, which is why we developed a regional pipeline, which is really the organization of all of the projects in the Valley that we're aware of, and then other opportunities that we know about from cities and from the county. We worked with our developers and city partners to develop this pipeline of projects throughout the region. Right now, it's got about 44 projects representing over 2,800 units, and it's a really diverse product, everything from mobile home parks to residential multifamily apartment buildings. And Tracy, we can go to the next slide. And what the group really wanted to prioritize was regional equity. So that means a few things. One, we want to put housing near job opportunities and other infrastructure, and we also don't want to concentrate affordable housing in one or two communities. And so we want to make sure that we're developing throughout the county, throughout Coachella Valley, and in high opportunity areas. And organizing the pipeline in this way has really allowed us to identify the policy and in the investment levers that we need to pull in order to unlock these units. Tracy, you can go to the next slide. And so a big part of collecting the pipeline information has been identifying ways that we can intervene in the enabling environment to unlock projects that are stuck, identify policies that will move these projects forward. Again, we know that investment is needed, but we also have learned that there are things in the development process that make it very difficult and expensive to develop. So we prioritize policies that will have favorable zoning and land use regulations. We know that increasing density or reducing parking requirements, for example, are ways where we can unlock projects. We can work to decrease production timeframes, which is an important part of saving money and reducing costs. And then reducing construction and development costs is another policy area where we're targeting. But we really recognize not only the unique market of the Coachella Valley, but also the unique opportunities and challenges of each city. So we don't want a one-size-fits-all approach to policy. It's really catered. We want to work with the cities and see what opportunities there are in each jurisdiction. And so Heather's going to talk about the third part of our housing strategy, which is our investment agenda.
Okay. I mentioned earlier, just at the very start, that the city of Cathedral City provided a letter of support, as did all 9 local cities in the county. Assemblymember Mays and Assemblymember Garcia have made an ask in the budget for a $25 million loan loss reserve for what we are calling the Coachella Valley Housing Catalyst Fund. The Catalyst Fund will launch probably in late March or early April. And the fund is part of this agenda. So together with folks across the valley and aggregating the pipeline, what we realized is that we really needed some type of investment vehicle to coordinate local, state, and other types of funding, but really also to figure out how we leverage capital to make projects move. So I won't go into the finance structure. I know this makes people want to go to sleep. But one thing just to say is that the Catalyst Fund is being led by the Low Income Investment Fund, which some of you might know the Low Income Investment Fund. They actually just posted today for the lead role for the Coachella Valley that will lead the fund. They are a leading national CDFI, which is a nonprofit bank, a community development financial institution. And this fund was really structured on the pipeline in the Coachella Valley. So the product types that you see on the left really are what local developers and local stakeholders identify that they need to make that huge pipeline move forward. We call this a capital stack cake, but really the short explanation of this is that we've raised more than $1 million for the operational costs of the Low Income Investment Fund to operate the fund for the next 3 years. And depending on how you count it or what day of the week it is, we have that blue layer of the cake at the bottom in pending grant funds that will really de-risk or absorb the risk of all the other capital on top of it. I'm happy to answer questions at the end if folks have questions about the finance of the fund, but it can often make people sleepy. But really just to say there's a lot of funds like this, a lot of catalyst funds in areas like San Francisco or LA and inland California. This is really the first of its kind. And it relies on all of the municipalities and all of the actors in our ecosystem working together to coordinate resources so that we can make that pipeline move. Is the next slide mine, Tay? Yeah, so this is kind of what I was explaining. So when we asked folks locally what kind of investment vehicle would drive the pipeline, of course, all of the developers wanted some type of unicorn fund that would replace RDA. That's not what the fund is. It's really a catalyst to provide a lot of pre-development or other types of seed capital that allow projects to move. So this slide used to be a 3-legged stool, and the fund, which is the red circle, was just one of the legs of the stool. So really what we see is that the fund provides catalytic resource that coordinated with city and state funds and county housing vouchers allows projects to move. So it's not gap filling subsidy, but just as an example, the state this year has several $100 million in and just in the last stimulus, there was $1 billion for early childcare and education. But often what happens is folks locally in our ecosystem don't apply for those resources because they don't have the pre-development and planning dollars to co-locate ECE with housing projects. So what the fund does is provides planning and pre-development resources that allows folks to unlock other types of resources at the state and elsewhere. And yeah, just as a point on the side, the fund and the pipeline, all of this work is driven by the Housing CAN and the Housing Work Group that has the participation of all 10 municipalities and more than 50 community organizations.
Okay. Thank you, Heather. So we know that addressing housing affordability, or rather the lack of, is only one side of the equation. So we think about it as one side of the same coin. And so at the same time, we're working with our partners at the County of Riverside and other community partners to imagine how we build pathways to economic mobility. You can imagine that this could involve workforce development strategies, incentivizing employers and businesses, or working with local government to think about policy solutions targeted to this end. And so though we recognize this piece of work is at a very early stage compared to our other pieces of work within the housing strategy, we're committed to be working together over the next 2 years to develop an economic mobility strategy that is driven by data and anchored in community priorities in the same way that our housing strategy is. Next slide, please. And so we know that the scale of this work, and as you heard, the scale of our shared goals, it really requires that we do this in partnership and in coordination with each other, with our local municipalities. And so this slide really just summarizes the 4 things that we want to do, that we are doing together and that we wanted to continue to do together with local and regional partners. And so what we're really asking for is for the city's support and participation and partnership in this shared work. In the package of materials that we submitted to you, we included a draft resolution that with your approval would signal the support of this pledge and this shared work. The rest of the slide just really, if we go to the next slide, well, this one's a thank you slide, so thank you. But the rest of the slides really just includes a little bit more context on the pledge. And this just mirrors the information and materials that we submitted with the staff report and the resolution. So I think we'll pause here and we're happy to take any questions if there are any.
Well, thank you very much for that presentation. Very well done. And thank you for the accompanying, as you said, the materials that are in the staff report. I know we all have reviewed those also. And that, as you've said, helping lift up economically and finding housing for people in our community is very, very important to us. And it is a need that continues in our community. So before we take any additional council comments or questions, do we have any members of the public that have either registered to speak, or if you are out there as a participant, you want to raise your hand and let us know, we can call on you now. I'll turn it over to the city clerk.
I see no hands, Mayor.
Okay, well then we'll go ahead and turn it over to council for any questions and comments. If we could start with Council Member Ross.
Oh, well, I was going to go that
I'm going to call on you.
Okay, well, hey, so Heather, you remember me?
Yes, they do.
So I started participating with Lift to Rise at their meetings about 3 years ago and thought their lift was too big. I just thought, you know, every month it just seemed like just all these incremental steps. There were a million of them that were going to get them anywhere. And guess what? I guess it's been like a million weeks because here they are. So I took the campaign year off because Tony Mize, well, anyway. So, and you know, and you guys know Lift to Rise, that Tony's with National Corps doing that big project here in Cathedral City. And so you can already tell that we're willing partners. And I would just tell my fellow council members that I'm an aye.
Well, we're not taking a vote, but we appreciate
I know, but I'm telling them.
All right. Thank you so much. Council Member Lamb.
Thank you so much for your presentation. And, you know, I on page 30 in our packet, it talks about the policy recommendations and specifics about Lift to Rise. And the one sentence, it says, why does this matter? And it says, the length of time for a project to get through city permitting processes is the single most significant driver of costs. And then it talks about the discretionary reviews from planning commission, design, et cetera, et cetera. Then it talks about Lift to Rise local strategies. What I want to know is how does it work? In other words, you have all these great ideas about how to refine the process. So do you make recommendations to the director of planning? I mean, how does it all work so that, you know, we're all on the same page? Because here's a great idea, and here's our planning commission. How do you meet? And I'm not a brand new council person, but I don't know this particular part of it.
Thank you for bringing that question to us. The first thing I'll say is we're in the process of refining and taking that policy agenda and making it more actionable. I think that's right now something that could be improved. But really what we know is that there are restrictions and there are ways that the city has to operate, you know, boxes that have to be checked. But there are also ways that the state, for example, has made it so that there's streamlining for, you know, either CEQA or getting like the streamlined process through SB 35. So really looking for opportunities for developers and cities to take advantage of those opportunities in place by the state. Again, I want to stress that it really is working with each city and looking at the opportunities that work within the city. And so that would be, I would say we're in the process of developing that out more fully, but we also have access to technical assistance. We've been helping with the SB2 and LEAP grants so that the planners, we brought HCD in to do a workshop and the city participated so they can, evaluate these opportunities to make this process more streamlined. So it's not like we're coming to you and, with a stick and saying, we really need you to get through in 30 days. We're really just looking, to be a partner and to, and a resource however we can to make projects go smoothly and, support projects.
And if I could just add really quickly, Councilmember Lamb, Taylor's position of regional affordable housing planner was identified by local partners when we developed the last action plan. They said the way that we're going to be able to drive a policy agenda and get on the same page across the valley is to have a regional affordable housing planner who can work with all of the cities and begin to work between and figure out like where there's traction, where there's shared possibility, how to streamline, and even things like, folks are using different consultants and folks need different types of technical assistance, and how can we increase efficiencies by Taylor's role and having folks work together.
Great, thank you. And what triggered it, my question, it talks about zoning, and it talks about accessory dwelling units, and we have that as part of our new ordinance regarding short-term vacation rentals. And so I wanted to know how that would ultimately gel. And now I see that if you have a person that would oversee that across the way, that would work. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember, and thank you for the response. It's always good that someone's going to come with ideas how to make these things happen, not just complaints that things aren't happening. So that's good. Councilmember Carnevale, did you have comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I don't think there could be a more difficult project in any city anywhere than what you're doing here, and it's just fabulous because if you don't do it, nobody else is going to do it. Everybody has some good ideas and they feel good about it, but what you're doing in Coachella Valley is just awesome. So I support this 100%. I mean, with all the people the children that are homeless right now, we need housing. As a matter of fact, my wife just answered my cell phone. There was a person on there who just lost his job and they're out of housing. They're living out of their car right now. This is so important. And if we don't keep trying and changing and moving forward, and we don't have a force like Lift to Rise, we're not get anywhere. And combining the cities together, I think is a great idea. I support it 100%. And just thank you for your presentation and what you're doing. Whatever we can do, I'm sure this council is going to back you 100%. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Council Member. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I also want to thank you for the hard work that you do and everything that you've done for our city and also for our region here. A lot of my tenants were recipients of your hard work with rental assistance, so they're really appreciated and they needed it. Now, your 2,000 units for the next 2 years is quite an aggressive project to undertake. Now, is there a city that needs more housing than others within the Coachella Valley?
Yes. And I think that probably also depends on your philosophical orientation. So one of the things that we believe, and that's why we included the slide on regional equity, we know that Cathedral City does a great job of housing the low-income workforce that drives the economy and cities around it as well, right? And so I think depending on your orientation, and I'll probably keep my really personal views to myself, but I think that there needs to be, we think as an organization and as in a partnership, that there needs to be housing in high opportunity areas. You all know that zip codes matter, and the institutional infrastructure matters, proximity to a school, to a grocery store. Those things have lifelong ramifications, especially during the time of COVID-19. So I think across the valley, we see a tremendous deficit. We also see an uneven production rate, that production isn't happening evenly across the valley. And where we see production, perhaps that's easier, the thing we have to ask ourselves as well is how are we making sure that we're increasing the supply of institutional infrastructure so that families are able to raise their children in communities where they have access to things. So without naming anyone, I think that, I think it's really important. We're really excited to see in the city of Indian Wells, the first multifamily project ever. That's terrific. We're excited to see that it's possible to potentially include infrastructure there as well. You all know there's tons of low-income, hardworking hospitality folks who work around that area, and that's transformative for our region when we think about the work-job imbalance that happens between where people live and where they work. So, I mean, I think the short answer is we have such a crisis deficit that we need more housing everywhere. And I think we all have to lean into how do we center folks in communities and not push them to the margins of our municipalities.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, now, I did hear that the low-income housing and low-income individuals that live within our Coachella Valley is pretty low. What is it, 33%? They pay more than 33% of their income in housing. Now, is Lift to Rise involved or trying to assist our residents in getting better paying jobs or bringing better paying jobs to our region?
I think the best way to answer is yes. I mean, aspirationally, so we say that the housing can that Nancy referred to participating in, it's like its own organization now. It has half a dozen staff and 50 partners and lots of support and big initiatives. What really grew that work on fire was that we became a pilot site for the Lincoln Land Policy Institute Center for Community Investment, and we've had tremendous support for the last 3 years. Wait, is this meeting public? It is, right? Okay, so I have to be careful on the next thing. Sorry, it's obvious that it's public. We just became a pilot site for something very similar for economic mobility, which will be announced in a couple of weeks, where our economic mobility work group in partnership with the county and others will have a similar level of support to work on an economic mobility action plan over the next couple of years, specifically focusing on how to increase living wages for Coachella Valley residents.
Okay. Now, another thing that you mentioned, you talked about building those 2,000 units. I know it takes a lot of money and you're trying to work in easing certain regulations in order to build them. Now, one of the things that maybe we can talk to our representatives up in Sacramento is, I'm sure that a lot of these units will have to be built with prevailing wages. Prevailing wages, as I don't know if you know, but that more than doubles the cost of construction, more than doubles. And also other regulations that you can maybe talk to them about is installing fire sprinklers in every unit is extremely costly and very little of use. And also installing solar panels in each unit, it also increases quite a bit the cost per unit. So maybe we can actually build more units, easing those restrictions.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, I mean, we agree with you. We think that there's dramatic policy changes that have to happen at a local, state, and national level. And you're not alone in your feelings that there's a lot of things that drive up cost, and we have to work on all of them concurrently to be able to push things forward.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. And I think you mentioned in your presentation that there is work on things like CEQA exceptions and those types of things. And of course, that would certainly help too. But it is always an interesting balance, as the council member brings up, that on one hand, you want to have jobs that pay better wages, but on the other hand, you have to watch some of these prevailing wage where you can, what it does to the costs. So it's part of the struggle, and it's very commendable that not only are you working on one part, but you're also working on the other and trying to, as we do, try to struggle with that balance. So, City Manager, what I'm hearing from the council and anybody in the council, let me know if you don't agree. But we're interested in of course, continuing to work with Lift to Rise and interested in assisting with this resolution, especially with the assurances that it's more for us to be able to support them and for them to be able to support us in bringing these goals to reality. At least that's what I'm hearing. And then there's a recognition, of course, with our need to balance other things we need to do to keep the city safe and healthy and a place where people want to live with our limited funding too. So that's what I'm hearing. Is anyone on council not in agreement that we should continue to explore and push forward with joining on in this resolution?
And Mayor, they have helped me out tremendously by providing a draft resolution. So we should be able to have that to you for your next agenda.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming and presenting, and very informative. And we're glad to hear of all the good work that you're doing, and hope to be able to be a big part of it.
Thank you so much. We're really grateful for all of your support.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, we do have a full agenda, so we'll move on right away to the Mark 43 CAD RMS implementation update. The very important changes to our public safety departments need. And I will turn it to the city manager to then go ahead and turn it over to whoever is going to speak first.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I am happy to be able to provide you an update on this project. This was suggested by Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez. I'll give him credit for that. I think it's important that, obviously our computer-aided dispatch and our records management systems are integral parts of our ability to provide law enforcement in our community. Chief Crum will introduce this, and then we have working this project on a day-to-day basis. Commander Paul Herrera retired from us last fall, and we wish him well in his retirement, but he's now contracting with us to complete this specific project, a contract that you all approved as well last fall. So Chief Crum and then Paul.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council members. I'm happy to be here today, along with the consultant, Paul Herrera, to give you all an overview of the Mark 43 CAD RMS system implementation. For those of you that aren't aware, the City Manager alluded to it a little bit earlier. CAD stands for computer-aided dispatch, and RMS stands for our record management system. The thing to remember as Paul goes through this presentation is that our implementation also impacts the city of Desert Hot Springs as well as our fire department. And we also have a nexus to Indio Police Department through our CLETS Department of Justice line as well. So with this brief introduction, I'm happy to turn it over to you, Paul, and I'll let you go through the presentation. Tracy, if you'll put the presentation up for us. Thank you. You're muted, Paul.
Sorry about that. Everybody hear me?
Yes.
Again, good afternoon, everybody. Council members, Mayor Pro Tem, Mayor Gregory. Thanks, Chief Crum. Tracy, could I have the next slide, please? In 2009, Cathedral City Police Department entered negotiations with Mark 43 and eventually ratified a contract with Mark 43 for CAD RMS services in June of 2019. At that time, I was administrative commander for the Cathedral City Police Department and started doing work as a project coordinator as collateral duty. When meeting with Mark 43 basically gave us 3 divisions of work or 3 separate phases, and that I'll explain and go through. So the first phase was a kickoff phase, and some of the highlights that began with this were going over the state of California's DOJ CLETS application, which we had to do a new CLETS application process and start that over with our new CAD RMS provider. All our third-party vendors were contacted, notified, and I started working with them about planning interface development. We have 15 separate third-party vendors for the fire department and the police department. So we started conducting background checks of all our third-party vendors and Mark 43 employees. This is per DOJ, state DOJ requirements. Again, we started meeting with the stakeholders to establish timelines, the different roles and responsibilities, and learn the developer's language and methodology, the tempo of their work, and basically wrap our heads around what it means to leave a CAD system that we had for 20 years and move along to a new system, and everything that entails. So we can go back to that phase, or to the last slide, Tracy, phase 2. So we started working on phase 2 development after working through phase 1. Phase 2, basically it interlapped over phase 1, and it was the largest part of our whole development. It's basically the implementation and all the heavy lifting that went on. Some of the highlights for that were, again, the development of the 15 separate products and interfaces, and making sure that all the work needed to be done with these separate products and vendors so that they still worked with the new CAD RMS system. The CLETS application process is lengthy, very complex, and it's broken up in different components and parts. And because of COVID-19 and for other reasons, DOJ has not provided consistent or timely communication. So that's been something that requires a lot of attention. The various phases of data migration and our data migration plan mean that we take our legacy data, which is 20 years of Siren data, Siren being the alliance program that we used to have, the records management system that we used to have, and migrating that into Mark 43. This would be in different rounds, and then we would have to validate it, meaning our employees would go over 15 to 30,000 types of reports to make sure that these were coming over properly. Another item that was large was the CAD and RMS configuration sessions, which basically meant we were making a determination about what attributes were going to go into the new system, what was going to be kept, and how it was going to read. When I say attributes, basically I mean the different drop-down type menus that our officers use when they're writing reports, the dispatchers use when they're entering calls, the records people use when they are going over reports and validating the reports. So during this period of time, we also created separate virtual work environments, which means that because Mark 43 is a web-based system, we create different environments for our officers to work in training, a different migration environment that we move all our data into, along with other environments for inputting training data into the Mark 43 system.
Excuse me, Paul, before you go, could you give me an example on the 15 separate products? I'm not really understanding what products is.
Absolutely. So we have different products for different sorts of jobs that are done. Say, for instance, in dispatch, our dispatch use a product called Active 911. This is a third-party vendor, another tech company or a software as a service company that sells the item to fire departments, police departments, emergency communication systems to basically ramp up and to develop a more accurate 911 system, an accurate phone system, which these products are required by the state of California in order to keep our CLETS license and to stay validated as a dispatch center, which also includes LexisNexis, which we use for crime analysis, Crossroads, which we will be using for traffic accident investigation and traffic reporting. The fire department used to use Firehouse, which was their RMS, separate RMS system. ProQA is the emergency medical dispatching system component that we'll be going through. So there are a number of different components. And when I say the different products, those are a couple of different examples of those, Mr. Carnavelli.
Thank you, sir.
Next slide, Tracy. Thank you. So as everybody remembers, approximately a year ago, the COVID pandemic ramped up in about February or March. started impacting government and obviously local government, which also started impacting Mark 43 and all the different non-government organizations and third-party vendors that we use in different ways. So in May of 2020, Chief Crum requested and started negotiating for a deferral of our subscription fees due to some of these budget cuts that were requested by City Hall as a result of the COVID pandemic. The subscription fees being yearly subscription fees that are paid to Mark 43 for the use of their CAD RMS system that we're developing. So this was agreed to by Mark 43 in June of 2020. And what they agreed to is to defer $100,000 in subscription fees, adding $100,000 divided up to upcoming contractual years 3, 4, and 5. So basically what that meant was instead of making contractual payments of $132,000 a year, we're making contractual payments now of $165,000 a year for years 20, 22, 23, 24, years 3, 4, and 5, adding $33,000 to each year. So that was agreed upon by Mark 43, which helped defer some of our budget issues. And again, we continue doing Mark 43 phase 2 work, which was all the heavy lifting about our implementation through the summer of 2020, and worked with our different changes that resulted from COVID, prohibiting travel for on-site vendors, meetings, and other technical work. So it's much like we are doing right now, doing everything via Zoom. Phase 3 started, and phase 3 basically was training, mostly training that occurred during October and November, training all the users of the CAD RMS system, which were our dispatchers, our report takers, our records people, our crime analysts, our detectives. And this occurred during the months of October and November. I retired in October, and I took on the responsibility of being the project manager as a contractor, and continued with the training, developing the training, which was conducted in a remote online conference type setting, not live training due to COVID, but that was a large undertaking that took place during October and November. So this was phase 3 was moved along, and it focused on training and the rollout and the launch, getting ready for the launch of the CAD RMS system. Next slide, Tracy. So recent activity. In November of 2020, Mark 43 in Cathedral City, we started to develop a timeline for launching our CAD RMS program. And we decided we're hoping to be able to launch it in December. However, because of the CLETS application and delays with the CLETS application, we could not launch it then. And the decision was made by Chief Crum not to launch our CAD RMS system without formal approval from DOJ. In late December 2020, Mark 43 in Cathedral City agreed to set a timeline for a March 2021 go-live date. This is pending approval from DOJ on the pending CLETS application. Now, the status of this application is pending regarding some testing by a third-party proxy line vendor that Mark 43 uses. Basically, another third-party vendor that's used to interface with our DOJ CLETS line. The CLETS application will be approved, and it is approved in different parts. So in speaking with some of the representatives from DOJ this week, they assured us that parts of it would receive approval as early as this week, and we just have some testing that needs to be done. So we are very hopeful that we're going to be able to move past this and receive the approval from CLETS that we need. Next slide. Data sharing and interoperability. So some questions and some concerns and or data about data sharing and interoperability. So Beaumont PD is also on Mark 43. Beaumont PD was the first consortium agency. When I reference consortium agency, I mean basically the ERICA agencies that were once all Siren based. They were the first consortium agency to change over to Mark 43. They moved away from Siren in May of 2019. They have recently launched and are working in Mark 43. Indio PD, Palm Springs, and Riverside County Sheriff's Department demoed and contracted with a company called Soma International of Tampa, Florida in 2020. This occurred after Cathedral City signed our contract with Mark 43. At the time when we were demoing different vendors and different providers, Soma was not on our radar at all. They were not in the state of California. Riverside County Sheriff's Department currently maintains a data clearinghouse known as Data Warehouse. It will continue to be used for research and data transfer to another third-party vendor called Lynx, and that will be updated and continue as a clearinghouse for data exchange and research amongst police agencies. So we will still have that ability to communicate and to share reports and data. Indio PD contracts to the Cathedral City Police Department for the use of our CLETS line and CLETS access. That will continue. And Desert Hot Springs Police Department is contracted with Mark 43 in a separate independent contract as part of their dispatch contract with Cathedral City Police Department, and they will maintain interoperability with Cathedral City Police Department. So, financial summary or some financial facts. In October of 2020, Cathedral City approved a contract with me when I retired to oversee the CAD RMS project and implementation for Cathedral City. Contract was approved through June 30th, 2021, and is not to exceed $110,000. The 5-year contract for Mark 43's CAD RMS service was in the amount of $699,624 when we penned that contract. To this day, Cathedral City has paid Mark 43 $201,839. So that includes our first year subscription fee, part of our second year subscription fee, and the first year of basically launch fees. So considering there's subscription deferral negotiated by Chief Crum, the total outstanding balance owed to Mark 43 at this time, which is broken up and parceled over the next 3 years, is a total of $497,784. Next slide. So in conclusion, the CAD RMS project is a large structural undertaking. It involves various city employees, subcontractors, third-party vendors, other government groups, along with a large amount of Mark 43 staff. The budget issues and some of the COVID issues, along with CYBERS, which is also known as NIBRS, which is the new reporting system that the Uniform Crime Reporting System, known as UCRs, is changing to, and also the upcoming RIPA, have changed some of our timelines. However, Mark 43 and CCPD are scheduled to go live with the CAD and RMS in March 2021. Thank you.
All right, Chief, did you have anything else you wanted to add, or are you ready for questions and comments? You're still muted, Chief.
I think we're ready, Mayor. I know that you understand the undertaking of a CAD RMS system implementation, so we are ready for any questions council or staff may have.
All right, let's start with any public comments. If you're listening on the public, if you please indicate if you wanted to speak right now. And City Clerk, do we have anyone that pre-registered with a question?
I see no hands raised at this time, Mayor.
All right. We'll go ahead and go to council, and Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to give you the opportunity to go first since this was an item that you requested.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I have a few questions, so bear with me. The first question, not quite sure if the chief will answer it or Paul, who's been more involved in this, but I'll start with the question, and feel free to either of you to answer the question. Now, why did we have to make the change to go from Alliance to Mark 43? What was the basic reason?
So that question, Mayor Pro Tem, I will defer to Paul, as I was not here when that decision was made.
Mayor Pro Tem, at the time, we had a different chief of police. that chief of police made a decision to go away from Siren, which we had for 20 years and was operating well for us, to go to a web-based, cloud-based platform that he felt was more modern and would serve the community and serve the city better as we move forward. That was discussed, and that was his decision to make that change.
Well, so let me just throw in, coming from a law enforcement department myself, there are a number of changes that have come about in the collection of data. Well, you mentioned RIPA. All departments have had to drastically change their systems, plus the fact that technologies have changed. So I'm not in with the intricacies of this particular decision, but your answer made it sound like, well, you know, we were just going along just fine, so you're not sure why we changed, and that seems to be incomplete. So if you could flesh that out a little bit. And
I could add something to that if I might, Mayor, because I recall the discussions at the time. And as you can see from the one slide, ultimately every agency in the area made the same decision to migrate off of the old legacy system to either Mark 43 or this SOMA system. And that's because the entire software industry everywhere is moving off of legacy systems, which require you to have a server on site and all your data stored on your location, to a cloud-based system. And we could have probably stayed with what we had for a few more years because you can hang on, but ultimately the entire industry is moving to the cloud-based systems. And the advantages to us is we don't have to have this bank of servers to store all the data and our IT staff to manage all that, because that's part of the service we're buying, is that all the data is actually physically stored at that other location. And financial software systems, CAD RMS systems, I mean, really every legacy software system is migrating in that direction. And that's why Cathedral City ultimately would have had to do it at some point. And that's why every other city in the region also ultimately migrated off of the old legacy systems.
Now, was Alliance able to upgrade their system to what you're saying?
Alliance has the capacity and the capability to upgrade to something comparable or similar, not at the price that we were paying, a price that they would require to go cloud-based and to go web-based. Well, actually, it wouldn't go cloud-based, but some of their migration data would go over into a cloud. But they are still physical server-based. They are not web-based. However, to establish the same platform that's modern or progressive or that can be upgraded in the same manner would cost probably in excess of anywhere between $60,000 to $100,000 a year. And that's, again, an informal quote, but in discussions with Siren early on that I had years ago, those were some of the numbers that were thrown around. So we wouldn't be able to do it for the cost that we were paying Siren for the last 15 years.
Was the opportunity given to Alliance to actually bid on such a migration or such a new program?
I know that I had some discussions with Siren in regards to them providing some additional invoice data that we could review, some more hard data in regards to what it would take to upgrade. And frankly, they were non-responsive to when I had discussions with their vice president in charge of production that we've been dealing with for the last 15 years. He was pretty much non-responsive in regards to that. So at the time, we were having some issues in regards to Siren completing some of their tickets, as we call them, which are repairs, delays on some things. And they were they're a small boutique type organization that hires engineers and coders as work jobs come in, so project jobs. And so in staffing some of those jobs, they couldn't give us anything formal until they really established a little bit more information. And they were not going to do that because at the time, the chief of police was looking at going on and moving on to different CAD RMS systems that were a little bit more progressive.
Now, just to let you know, I did speak with a representative from Siren, and he told me very different information than what you're telling me. And I spoken with many people. I spoken with some of our police officers. I spoken with dispatchers. I spoken with police officers from Desert Hot Springs, and I spoken with council members from the city of Desert Hot Springs. Now, yes, this Desert Hot Springs did migrate to the same program. Reason being is because we forced them, because we dispatched for them, and we had to make since we changed, we had to make them change. There's no way that our dispatch center was going to work with two different systems, one from the old one from the new one. Now, have you asked police officers how efficient this new program is in comparison to the old one?
Oh yeah, one of the jobs that I have and one of the responsibilities I have of being the organizer of this and the project manager is also trying to champion change. Change is not easy in a police department. I've been a police officer for 31 years. I've also been here at this police department for 25 years. I know the culture here, and I know that we were involved with a CAD RMS vendor that we were very comfortable with. It was very user-friendly. It is very user-friendly and is very intuitive because everybody has basically figured out how to make things work with this physical-based server and this and the RMS system that we have. Absolutely. However, the new system, and I will absolutely, I know our officers don't like the new system from when they have done tests on it and when they have worked with it. It takes some getting used to. There are a lot of different changes that are required because of what's called NIBRs. So in regards to that, we have to enter more information sometimes. Sometimes there's different types of detail that we have to enter that we didn't have to enter previously with UCR reporting. I know that that's one of the components. Mark 43 does not do everything parallel that Siren did, but for that matter, Siren does not do anything near what Mark 43 does. For crime analysis, for NIBRs, for RIPA, for third-party vendors or platforms that are software as a service, for doing the work that we need to do in establishing a platform for the fire department and for emergency medical dispatching and moving into the future. Doesn't do anything near what Mark 43 does.
Now, why did we have to migrate or convert all the information by, you can say by hand, and not have Mark 43 converted themselves? It has taken quite a bit of time, more than 2 employees, to migrate the information, which it should have been completed by Mark 43. Why are we spending so much money with those employees? Plus, on top of that, a lot of information, a lot of reports are not able to be uploaded to Mark 43. They can only be attached. The information cannot even be migrated.
Absolutely. In regards to some of that question, I'll take it in parts. Some data cannot be migrated. And to explain this, Mark 43 has locations for all of their data in their system. Siren has locations and data that was custom built and custom created for us 20 years ago. Well, when we contracted a Mark 43 and we want to move our data over into Mark 43's RMS system, there isn't always a place for it or a location for it. So Mark 43 has difficulties in trying to determine, okay, Cathedral City, what data do you want? Do you want to keep this data or not? We need to find a location for it. So because of that, some of the migration process has been difficult. But just to make a clarification, our records employees, 2 of the records employees that are helping with the data migration are not actually doing the data migration. What they're doing is the data validation. Mark 43 is migrating the data as they should. In fact, they're using a third-party vendor called Whitebox, and we are using other software that they have developed in order to communicate and to make these changes and to validate this data. Mark 43 migrates the data. We go over it and make sure it's in order. One of the things that I do, along with the records people, is to make sure that the data that we had and we held in Siren for 20 years of data is going to be migrated in a way that gives us the same quality and the same type of report in the same manner, in the same form as we had, so that it's legible, so that it could be used in criminal cases, so that we could move forward with it in prosecutions, and we could use it as necessary. So it is a heavy lift, and it is a very difficult thing to do for any sort of provider that is moving from one CAD and RMS platform to another. Every other project manager I've talked to that has done this type of work for other agencies runs into the same issues. One of the problems that we have is we're what we call a legacy system with Siren. In other words, we went from writing in Word, docs, that type of thing, printing reports, and then not having everything in a file. Everything was paper. Now we are paper-based when we went to Siren. So we're a first-generation user. So now when we went to Mark 43, Mark 43 does similar things, but it doesn't have the same, I guess, emphasis or wow factor that a lot of the officers are looking for, because we are already a first-generation user. We're not we are not going from writing on stone tablets or paper to the internet and hopping onto the internet. We're already there. We had a good system for a lengthy period of time. However, that system doesn't do everything that Mark 43 does.
And vice versa, Mark 43 does not do a lot of things that Alliance did. For instance, if you have to seal a case, for instance, someone's information has to be sponged and you have to seal that case. Is Mark 43 able to do that?
To do sealings with
Yes.
Through their program? Yes, absolutely. They do that. We have a process for that.
Now, someone's actually not telling me the truth, or you don't know how to use the system. I've been told that you can't do it, that you cannot do it. And this is from someone that is very efficient in Mark 43, that does not like it at all and was very well aware of using Alliance. Now, sealing a case, okay, you either have to delete the person's name, and if you delete, you cannot change the name. Now, to delete that person's name, you can't just do that, because that person's name can be involved in many different pages and cases throughout a homicide or rape or whatever case it is. So I believe that it's absolutely not true that you can seal a case, and it's something very difficult that Mark 43, and something extremely important if you have to seal a case. And if you seal a case, you seal a case for a certain person, but you do not seal the entire case. You just seal that person's name. Now, you cannot cross that person's name. All that is very confusing, and it is not true. So that's one thing. Another thing is, when you detain somebody in the DA's office in a month or so, decides not to press charges. Now, that person was never charged. It was only detained. You can't do that with Mark 43. You can't just say this person was detained, nothing happened. Later on, this person was actually found to have committed this crime. He was, you can say, arrested again. Now, the time-wise and everything, the way Mark 43 works, does not allow you to change, to do a lot of those changes. Is that correct?
Was that a question? Can you repeat
Yes.
that?
Oh, yes. Mark 43 does not allow for changes to be made to arrest records.
Well, we don't make changes to arrest records currently. What we do is we will add a supplemental report in Mark 43 that will record any sort of changes that occurred with that person, anything that went on in the case, that type of thing. Once data is entered, even with Siren, it's entered and we can't change that. There's a record of that, and it's done for legal reasons. However, I don't know where the information, not that it's a point at this right now that needs to be discussed, but looking at Mark 43 to people that are not in the system every day is like looking at a house from the outside. And I invite any of the council members or anybody else I could do a personal demo with them with a number of different things that we do every day and how the implementation is going and how it works, to be able to look inside this house and see what I do every day and what is done in Mark 43 every day and what our officers will be using and how they'll be using it every day. To look at the plumbing and the electrical and the studs inside and see how it's built, because I'm helping building it. So I'm pretty aware of how it's being built and what it is required to work properly. There are different functions, and there is a different location, and there is a different way of doing the same functions that are necessary for police agencies to do the work that needs to be done. Mark 43 is, they are embedded in California in a number of different police agencies, and they are already been basically, they're already being used by a number of different agencies, and all the different components of it are being used successfully. There are things that I know our officers don't like about it. And these are things that, the point of phrase, you don't know what you don't know what you don't know. Because as we got into developing our implementation with Mark 43, there were things that we found out that it did not do in the same way that our officers were used to. Maybe it needed 2 or 3 different steps, or maybe we were unable to do that particular thing, but we had to do something else in order to shore up that particular component of work. I agree. It is not necessarily as intuitive as Alliance was in some ways for some aspects, but the report writers aren't the only people in the police department, and they're not the only people in the city. We have our fire department that this impacts, our dispatch, our CAD system, our records people, our crime analysts. And when we look at different systems, you look at all those different components, everybody weighs in on different things. And that's what we did with the budget that we had and looking at all the different vendors that were available to us at that time. And Mark 43 came out looking better than other CAD RMS providers did at that time.
Now, I have to tell you something. I heard that there was 5 cities looking at this program, local cities. They all walked away not wanting, not desiring this program. Only our previous chief decided to purchase this program. The rest hated it. They didn't like it. They hated it. They thought it was the lowest program, the least that they wanted to use. It was not the proper program to actually utilize. Now, of course, this was not your decision to make, but it was made. Now, do you think this program is easy to use?
Well, as I mentioned before, it is not as intuitive from the report writing portion of it as Siren was. I'll be completely transparent about it. Where I stand, I'm in a unique situation because I work for the police department, but yet I need to usher in and move this along because we are contractually binded to this CAD RMS system, and it is a CAD RMS system that works. I don't like change. Our police officers don't like change. And the system that they are going to be using is going to take some getting used to. I completely 100% agree with that. I've tried to champion that. I've tried to consider the culture, and I've tried to consider the different reasons why we need to move on. Not everybody necessarily takes that into consideration. and it does. It affects our officers' day-to-day work and how they work. However, it is only a small portion of their day, and it's only a small portion of what we do in regards to our data entry and our report writing.
Now, let me jump in on that for a little bit. Now, yeah, you're right. You're in a very unique situation. You have to actually defend this program because you've been working on it for so long. And also there are certain things that you probably can't say and you personally about the program that you don't like. Now, this program, it should have been easier to work with and also provide all the capabilities that you mentioned. Now, why is this program takes you from click to click to click to click to click to get where you want to go? Now, to write a report, numerous officers are told me that they're going to be taking a lot longer, 2, 3, 4 times longer to write a report. Now, writing reports right now takes a long time. Why are we going to take our police officers from being on the field, actually arresting people, preventing and solving crimes, when all they're going to become is report writers? Those are not my words, by the way. Those are words from different officers, that they're going to become report writers, and it's going to take them a long time. Now, let's not just talk about them. Dispatchers, they have to go from window to window to window to window. Now, that does not make it efficient for them either. Now, if we continue to talk about all this, we have to make this easier, not harder, for police officers. Now, you stated that we spent $699,000 with this program, plus, of course, all of the fees over your wages since you've been working on this program, which has been about 1.5 to 2 years, plus your contract. Also, we have had at least 2 people working on this particular migration of information into this program. Now, not all of the information is also being migrated. As a matter of fact, if there's a homicide, there's a lot of places that you cannot migrate the information. You actually have to print it, scan it, and attach that information to the new program. You can't just migrate it. Now, we're talking about years and years or decades of information. Now, are we going to be able to get rid of or actually end the contract with Alliance or Siren?
Chief?
Yes, we will eventually go away from Siren completely once the data migration takes place. I won't be spending money on 2 CAD RMS systems at that point in time.
Now, my understanding is that we have at least till, let me tell you, till we have a little longer of a contract with them to actually migrate all the information. But once we end the contract with Siren or Alliance, we are not going to be able to access that information any longer. And a lot of the information that we have there, very, very important information as to homicides, rapes, all these horrible crimes that happen in our city, that we probably will need them not in a year or 2 years. Once we end the contract with Siren, all that information goes away. We no longer have access to it unless we contract with them for years.
No, sir, that's actually incorrect. I've built in a redundancy system where we will be maintaining the Siren data. Remember, we have it on a server here. So that data will be maintained in its original format from Siren. And we will still have the additional items migrated into Mark 43.
Well, one thing for sure is we have to make sure that that is the case, because that is a very, very important thing that we need to make sure, because that information will be extremely important Now, let me see what other questions I might have. Almost
Chief,
done. I'm sorry.
Chief, were you finished with that answer? Mayor Pro Tem, if you would let them finish. I know you're passionate about this, but a couple of times I'm not sure if they've finished with their answers.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I'd like to.
That's okay. I just wanted to let you know and reiterate that I had actually had a discussion with IT and Paul Herrera almost 3 months ago to make sure that we had a redundancy program put in place. Because if we do lose some data in the migration from Siren Alliance to Mark 43, I still want to have a hard file of that 20 years of data. So that is happening.
And just so on clarification on that, the server data that we have, the physical servers that we own with that data on it, that data isn't going away, and we can access that data. So that information, again, there are different methods to doing it. We use what's called software called Crystal Reports. We use another software program called Access, and we access and create reports and are able to access that data. Siren knows it. Mark 43 knows it. That's our data. We keep our data in that format, all of it. But we are also taking that data and we are merging it into Mark 43 so that it shows up in the same attribute places and locations that Mark 43 data is in. So that way it's searchable, and our crime analysts can use Mark 43 and the Mark 43 analytics to search our old 20-year data. So it's actually what's called it's called an enterprise migration, in which they import all our data over. So we're going to have our data in a number of different locations, and then we're retaining it both on a physical server and on Mark 43's cloud.
Now, when you write a report, when a police officer writes a report and it sends it to the sergeant or whoever's in charge, now the sergeant reads it and there's a misspelling in some kind of word or something. Now, can he make all the changes, or it has to be sent back again to the person that wrote the report, have it corrected, sent back, reviewed again? Hopefully there's no changes.
What's done is he can move some of that data off of that report and then move it to a different form, which he sends to that officer, and then re-import it. So in other words, it doesn't have the same function that Siren had. In Siren, what you could do is if an officer had a spelling error or there was a change that needed to be made, that supervisor could take over ownership of that report and send it back to the officer or make those changes and then resubmit it. Well, in Mark 43, that doesn't exist. That supervisor or whoever's approving the report has to take over ownership of it and then creates what's called the supplemental report. Now, some of the things that Mark 43 does and their functions are based on best practices. So some of these best practices that exist are somewhat either cumbersome or they may seem redundant, but they are the best way of doing things, and they are how things basically should be done in law enforcement.
Now, this question is very important just in case. There's so many things that, from what I'm seeing, it's not efficient. It's not efficient, and those are not my words, and they're not the words from one officer or two officers or one dispatcher or two dispatchers, nor the chief and council members from the city of Desert Hot Springs, nor the police officers from Desert Hot Springs. Now, if it's not an efficient program, let's say we still haven't implemented this. It's been over a year now. Do we have an exit clause for that contract, for this contract?
So I can touch on that, Mayor Pro Tem. When I got here in February of 2020, I went through that contract word by word. There is no exit clause in that contract. The only opportunity that I would have to come out of that contract would be a breach by either the city or Mark 43 themselves. The only other option I would have is if this council's direction was to stop the implementation of Mark 43, we would have to pay out the remainder of that contract and continue on with a legacy system.
I think that's a very big mistake in our part not to have worked an exit contract a little too late. But I think that was a big mistake because I think we should have, now that this program is upon us and we're about to do the implementation, I do not believe that it was the best decision. I do not believe that it was you guys' decision to be made. It was made. I think we were sold a bag of bad information. And I think that we should make our police officers, we should make our dispatchers, our record keepers, we should make their jobs easier, not harder. We forced Cathedral City, we forced Desert Springs to change to this program. Beaumont was also talked into changing this program. Beaumont was the first went in and contracted with Mark 43 after we did. For some unknown reason, they implemented their program and they're using this program right now with a lot of difficulties as well. And they're still working through it. And as a matter of fact, I don't think that, I think that we should do further research. And I think we should have actually have used several of our police officers and dispatchers, and we should have utilized their input before we made this purchase. Now, I think that we should consider the implementation and possibly the delay on this until we know that this is, when we make changes, change is supposed to improve our lives, make it easier. In this case, I do not believe those two things are there. Now, just to change from cloud-based and web-based, Alliance would have done it. They made every change, every modifier that we needed to our contract. They were always there to make that. They were very disappointed that they were never given a fair chance. We met with them a couple times. Yeah, we did. Those are not my words. Those are the words directly from Siren and Alliance. They were never given a fair opportunity to bid on this contract. The pages on this new software, they're pretty. There's color. There's little things. Is it what our officers need? I do not think so. Is it what our dispatchers need? I don't think so. Now, another thing is that when you print a program, when you print a case, you don't just get one report. In one report, you get several bunched up reports. You cannot print individual reports from Mark 43. Now, when you do a case, let's say you have a homicide and there's 10 suspects involved, okay? With Alliance, you make one report with 10 suspects. With Mark 43, you need 10 reports with 10 suspects. Now, is that an efficient way of doing things? I do not believe so. Now, is this going to cut?
Mayor Pro Tem, can they answer the question? You just made a statement about reports.
That was a little bit of a statement, Mayor.
Yeah, but it sounded like a question, and because you're saying something, can they verify if that's true or not?
Sure.
Actually, there is one crime report, but there are, let's say you have 10 suspects or you have 10 actually arrests. Arrests are the only way that you will have to print separate reports. There's 10 separate arrest reports if you arrest 10 people for that crime. That is accurate. If you have one crime report with 10 suspects, you don't have to have that many reports, only with the separate arrest reports.
Great. So
now that's a clarification. That's just a clarification on things.
Now, when we send these reports to the DA's office, there's not going to be just a single report. It's 50-page report. It's actually going to be a 200-300 page report. I don't know how the DA's office is also going to respond to this, but it is going to make it also a lot more difficult for the DA's office to work on this. Because do you agree that this report is going to be as simple or simply written as it was with Alliance, as it is with Mark 43?
Well, I know that the district attorney's office is also going to have a learning curve anytime that they change CAD RMS providers and they're looking at a new report that is formatted in a way that they're not used to seeing. And it happens. We go through RMS changes and cycles in law enforcement over the years. It just so happens we've had ours for a very lengthy period of time, and we had a consortium that all used the same group. And the DA's office did become used to looking at those reports from the ERICA agency, so to speak. And the only other ones that were different was Riverside County Sheriff's Department. And in fact, they're going away from that, and they will have a different report they will be using also. So it's going to be difficult for the district attorney's office to get used to. Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, I believe that we should think about it and I'm not an expert on this. I acquired all this information from different people, but I think we should have had actually someone from Siren to give them the opportunity to see what the cost would have been if they would have been able to do this. Because I'll tell you this, from what everyone says, that's one thing they all agreed upon as well, is Alliance kicks butt in regards to Mark 43. There's no comparison. Alliance is a much, much superior program than Mark 43. That is a concurrent statement from everybody, from our department and many other departments. We should have listened to more people and not taken this decision and purchasing this program just by one individual. And that is it. So council members, I'm requesting that you think about it and you do a little bit of homework like I did. I spent countless hours on the phone with different people. Why? Because this is our city money. This is our employees. And I believe that police officers deserve easier work, you can say work software, easier to work with and more reliable than what we have. If we can't improve it, why change it? Our police officers need to be on the streets working and not becoming report writers. So if you would please take the time and speak with different individuals, different cities, council members from Desert Hot Springs, our dispatchers, to see what they have to say. Don't take my words for it. I did my homework. But please see what you can do for our police officers in the future of our department. This software, this change is costing us so far over $1 million to change. Alliance would have done it for a lot cheaper. We were paying $25,000 a year for their services. Now, for any change, any modifications we needed, which it happened often, we were paying $5,000 if we needed something changed within the program, and they responded fairly quickly. And we were one of the favorite cities to do business with, Alliance. So please take your time, do your homework. And if you'd like me to contact you with a few people, I would love to. But that concludes my questions, Mayor. And I'm sorry that it took too long, but I thought it was kind of important. Thank you.
Thank you. Since we start with the Mayor Pro Tem, we might as well go backwards if you're ready. Councilmember Carnevale, did you have any additional questions or comments?
No, I don't have any questions. Pretty much more comment. It's, yeah, if we're kind of like a Monday morning quarterback here. If we would have known back then what we know now, Councilman or Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez, things could have been changed or adjusted. But and thank you for your presentation on this. You asked some really good, honest questions up forward. You did your homework on that, and that's very good. But my feelings right now is from what Chief Crum says, we're into this right now without an out clause. So there lies a problem there. Paul Herrera has done an most outstanding job putting this together. It's when he was able to grow a beard instead of losing hair doing this program.
I've already lost my hair, Mark.
Yeah, but yeah, and I know that, and thank you for your honesty that a lot of the police officers do not like it. I understand that. When I switch over programs at the restaurant from time to time, there's a learning curve. You know, I get that. Sometimes the learning curve is easier. Sometimes it's a little bit more difficult. So I understand that too. And thank you for also bringing to the fact there's other areas that use this program, just not only the police officers. And I'm sure that's an honest statement too. So I don't really have anything to say, Mayor, on this other than I think with due respect to Mayor Pro Tem, we don't really have a choice to do anything else but to most likely go forward with this and hopefully it works out in the future. We can be more, minded to ask more questions up front. I do have one question for Paul. When all this is up and going, is that pretty much the cost is stopped now? I mean, there's not going to be no every month we got to lay out more money for changes or every year changes. Is this going to be good for the next 20 years like we had on Alliance?
Well, once we hit year 5, we will start paying, I believe it's anywhere between 3 to 5% more every year for our subscription fee, incrementally each year thereafter, if we decide to stay with Mark 43 and continue to subscribe with them. Depending on what type of components we add, there's always what they call interface builds, is we add different things. So in other words, if we want to add a component that did something else, we would have to pay for that. And there may be some interface fee in which engineers have to build something so that it interfaces with the RMS system or the CAD system that we currently have. But yes, it should, for the most part, be the heaviest financial lift should be completed.
Okay, thank you. And again, Mayor Pro Tem, I know your passion on this, and I just at this particular point, I just have to go forward with the program, and that's basically all I got to say. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
You were muted, Mayor.
There we go. All right, Councilmember Lamb, it's your turn.
Hi there, and thank you so much. And this discussion was really illuminating to me about this particular program. And my background is in education, and in 3 different school districts, we went through 3 different attendance reporting system upgrades, and it creates lots of anxiety because there's no CD player in the new one, and you like that better, so I understand it on a very elementary level. So I understand all the energy around that. But I agree that we've made this commitment, and to move forward on is probably the most provident thing to do. And it's a good lesson for us as we sit back and see how we're going to go forward. The one question I had when it said, on page 53, it said the sheriff, Riverside County have also contracted with SOMA in 2019. Therefore, interoperability through Siren's client base will no longer exist, but that there is the data clearinghouse, data warehouse. So I'm assuming, explain what that piece means. What does that mean?
I'm sorry. Interoperability from the standpoint of either CAD or RMS would have to do with the ability to share things, share data. So the interoperability that we previously had with Siren was Desert Hot Springs, Indio Police Department, Palm Springs, Cathedral City were all on Siren. We could log on, we could enter a police report that was written by the Palm Springs Police Department and see it. And see what was written. We could actually log on and follow the reports as they were being written into their part of the system. So that was true interoperability on that level. We won't have that interoperability anymore. But that isn't because we're going to Mark 43. The decision was made around that period of time where everybody was just kind of going away from things, either whether it be to go away from Siren because of things that Siren was not doing at the time, which was, I was privy to and did witness, or to improve on their platforms. So that did occur, and that's not the interoperability. But the interoperability through data warehouse means that we'll be able to continue to use data warehouse to research sheriff's department's reports and other agencies' reports. The sheriff's department can do the same thing. We're building what's called an interface that is a push and a pull of data. So we're pushing data into there, and we're able to pull data. And the Riverside County Sheriff's Department, through their data warehouse, what's known as links, is able to do the same thing. And they can populate data that same way.
Okay. So in other words, this is not creating any obstacles for police officers to operate at the highest level of efficiency.
The only obstacle that it creates is it will be a time lag. We won't have that same inner valley operability. We will not. It will be slower.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ross. Councilmember Ross, did you have comments or questions?
I need to take my microphone off mute. Sorry about that. I have no comments at this time. Thank you.
All right. All right. Well, thank you. The only real question I had, I don't know if it's a question, but I know, and I'm not trying to add, but I know this this issue of not getting CLETS approval, it is kind of a head scratcher to me, because especially if Beaumont is already on Mark 43, and apparently, or maybe not, but I mean, I hope they have CLETS access. Chief, if you want to maybe clarify, because and are we like the first in the state to do this, or why is DOJ having issues with approval?
Well, to go back to Beaumont launched without DOJ approval.
I see.
They are still having what I would call not a positive experience with DOJ by their decision to launch without approval.
Yes, that's not a good idea. I would not recommend that we do that either.
Which is why I did not launch December 1, because I did not have that approval as of yet.
Okay, but are we honestly seeing that this is just a little ways away, or do we need to take some extraordinary steps to try to shake them loose?
We did. This week, actually, we reached out to our DOJ coordinator's boss, and that lit a fire. So I do anticipate, with the exception of one testing series that IT here needs to do, we should have our approval before March 1st. Okay.
Well, good, because I'm sure you're much more aware of the concern than I am, but of course I'm always concerned when there's training, especially when it's hard and there's a lot of changes, which it sounds like there is, and then you have a lag time because of some issue, and then you go for implementation. That's not ideal at all. So.
Right. And I take full responsibility for not launching, because I would not do it without their approval.
All right. And I think a lot of great issues were raised. Mayor Pro Tem, thank you very much for bringing this issue to us. I know that I do, though, agree with my peers, unfortunately, that we're kind of well along the way and without an out clause. So I don't really know if at this point, other than to continue to monitor and see if some of these can be resolved, and to continue to encourage the police administration to do what they can do, and whether we really have a choice. It seems like the choice is if we have a multi-year contract, we have to play out at least whatever we can until we get to the first out, and then somewhere before that time make a decision whether it's still too difficult and not workable, and then whether we have to, and that would be expensive to restart the process again. But if that's what we have to do to answer those concerns, I think you brought up some great points about if it really cuts into the time of dispatch, the time of the officers, those types of things to a certain degree. Now, some of the things I was surprised to hear was like where you went into the discussion about can the reviewer change the report, or do they have to kick it back to the original writer to review it? I mean, that is a best practice, that the report can't be changed by a reviewer. They can make notation about what they believe needs to be changed, but it has to go back, especially because the officer may be called onto the stand with the report in front of him and be asked if those are his words. That frequently happens. And then you place them in an awkward situation of saying, well, almost, but some of it was changed, or not telling the truth. So I know that, as the retired commander pointed out, that is a best practice, and most places have gone away years ago from that ability. So if Siren still had that ability built into it, that was a problem, and that might be very telling as to why we really needed to have this change. And the other thing I wanted to point out, although I would agree with you, Mayor Pro Tem, that we weren't given necessarily good information, the buck stopped here. This contract came before council. We had the opportunity to discuss. Now, I'm not saying that maybe we didn't know all the information, but maybe nobody knew all the information, and we did approve this contract. So ultimately, it's, although we can, and maybe rightfully, point out that we weren't given all the information, and we were led to believe that this was the best decision, and maybe there were issues that still needed to be addressed at the time, we did make that decision. So to a certain degree, we need to own that also. And as I heard some of my peers saying, should be a good lesson for us, because, maybe when we dig and it seems like everything's been revealed, maybe we do need to dig some more. Maybe we do need to get some more people involved. We have done some major software changes, and I know, as the city manager pointed out, including our accounting changes, and a lot of that's been a struggle too. And where some of that, I know that happened before I was on council, but it's been implemented since you and I have been on council, Mayor Pro Tem, and there have been some disappointments there, or some hopes that reporting and the supervision of funds would be better and quicker, and that's been a struggle too. So I'm sure this will be the change, and I'm not so worried about the data. I mean, because we talked about the police chief and retired commander talked about the migration, and that's what the migration is for, to take your old data and move it into your new data, although you do have to retain the original also, if that should be required. So there are some of the things you pointed out that I do kind of don't think they're necessarily as big of an issue as you may have been led to believe, but many of the things that you have talked about are concerns, and I think all of us are concerned about that. So I don't really know if there's any other pathway than to just continue on, but with these concerns noted, and to get some type of an update at a reasonable period, and certainly get an update when we do finally come to a decision point of whether we should continue on, even though that may be a few years from now, or whether we do need to take a different approach. I wish I woulda, coulda, that really, and buyer's remorse, those all get mixed in here. And especially seeing that the sheriff and our next door agency, Palm Springs and Indio, went with Soma. And even if Soma wasn't around, I mean, you look now and say, wow, it would have been great if we would have waited, or maybe trailed if we could have. It seems at the time, I remember there was an urgency and a belief that our system was very much out of date and unable to do what we needed it to do. But now looking back, it seems like maybe waiting and trailing with some of those other agencies might have been a smarter way to go. And we might still be here. We might still be changing programs. There might still be people upset about that. But, since they made a decision to go with someone else, that does, to me, more than staying on with Siren if Siren wasn't looking like it was going to be able to do what we needed it to do. But maybe looking at this other program, which I'm hearing now wasn't really evaluated for a reason, that it wasn't really around at the time, but it kind of begs the question, well, maybe we should have waited if they were also looking, which I know they were at the time of replacing their CAD and RMS. Maybe we should have waited a little bit. So maybe that'll be a lesson that we need to learn too. So. those are my comments. Is there anything else on this topic?
Hey, Mayor, if I could just add, we'd be happy to take a look at the contract. There is always the difference between whether the item isn't expected as you anticipated or whether it's just not performing or going to perform how the vendor originally represented that it was going to perform. Happy to explore that with the police chief and his and Paul. You might recall that this out clause was something that was an issue with this contract. I generally don't like contracts that don't have out clauses. In this case, it was something that the vendor wanted. They wanted to do the complete multi-year installation and migration work and didn't want it out at that time. We went back and forth with them about that. But it wasn't something that we didn't think about. It was something that was part of the deal at the time. But again, if it's not performing as represented, that still gives us the ability to reconsider and either negotiate or claim that they're in breach. I'm happy to work with the city manager and police chief on that if that's the council wants some information about that at an upcoming meeting.
Thank you. Actually, that does sound very wise to compare what was promised to see if we are getting it. So if you would work with the police department on that, and I'll ask for nods from the rest of the council. And if nothing else, I think we need to see where the legal mileposts are. So even if it's not to a point where we're able to claim non-performance, but there's some mileposts that are going to be coming up in the future where we will have, working with the police department, we'll have an option of taking a different direction. We'll need to see those well ahead of time, because if that's the way it looks like the police department and the city needs to go, well, then we'll need to start working on those well ahead of time. So if you would do that, and council, I saw some thumbs up. Is everyone okay with that course of action? Okay, I'm seeing the nods. So so please, yes, move forward that way.
Will do. Thank you.
Mayor, Chief or city manager, did anyone else have anything to add?
I don't have anything to add on that. I think we got the direction that we need on that from you. I was just going to suggest that our other two study session items, we probably need to place on the end of the legislative items at the regular meeting, because I think you're going to need at least a little break before we start the regular meeting at 5:30.
You are very wise. I believe you are correct. Chief, anything else?
Oh, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, then we will take a recess, and we will be moving the next two items to the end of our legislative calendar, and we will be convening into our regular meeting at 5:30. See you then.